of marriage will do that to you. This is my wife, Tracy Davenport. Dr. Davenport teaches down at Chesapeake College. She's a professor of psychology. And sometimes I think myself and the kids are one of her experiments, but I'm not quite sure. So, Dr. Davenport.
Thank you. Hi, everybody. First, I just want to thank you for being here. You've probably heard it before, but maybe I bring a new perspective to you. I want to thank you not just, on behalf of Washington College and visiting the school, but I want to thank you as a parent of a teen athlete and as a high school athlete. And I know what your Saturdays are worth. I know what your to-do list probably looks like. And you took time out today to get better so that you could be a better coach with high school athletes. And from the parent perspective, I thank you very much. I'm going to talk to you today about a topic that I'm very, very interested in. And I was telling Mike that I don't think these guys are going to like this topic. It's not very interesting. I said, but if I could go back and study one thing, and he's assured me I'm done with education, but if I could go back and study one thing, it would be sleep. Because right now the research is fascinating on what we're learning about sleep. It's what we've maybe suspected all along, but now we're really able to put some good data and do some good lab work about what sleep is showing us, especially with teens. And since you're involved in teens, I was really excited to share this with you today. My area of expertise is integrated healthcare. I have a PhD in human development, and as Mike said, I teach psychology. So here we go. Going to talk about teen athletes and sleep. And some of you are thinking, I'm not sure what this is going to have to do with me. Where's the rigging guy? And you're looking at your thing. How do I get faster? But bottom line is I think that more sleep can make your team better and make you faster. And I'm going to explain to you why that is in the next 16 minutes. First, I just want to give you a tiny bit of background about sleep. We don't know exactly, if you look through the scientific literature, we are not sure exactly why we need sleep. We don't have a complete answer. It's one of the mysteries out there. That's why it makes the research so exciting. We know a little bit about it. We know that it's a time for growth, especially in young people. We know it's a time for restoration, to rest our body. We have some pretty good ideas about that. What's interesting about sleep is that it must be pretty darn important. Evolutionarily speaking, I guess that's a word, is that we are in a very, very vulnerable position when we're at sleep. So if we're still continuing to sleep as a species, there must be a really good reason. One thing that's interesting is we can put rats in a laboratory and we can take food and water away from them and we can take sleep away from them. Would you know that they die quicker without sleep than they do without food and water? If that tells you how important sleep is, more important than food and water. Now, how much sleep does a teen need? I'd like to answer that question next. And some of you are going to gasp and shake your head, and I got it. I'm expecting it today. Don't worry, I had a couple of cups of coffee, and I'm ready for you. Well, according for the Centers for Disease Control in 2012, right now, they are finding that teens need 8.5 to 9.25 hours of sleep a night. Yeah, he's laughing. He's like, when's the break? This lady's crazy. Because I got it. Some of you are at private schools where maybe homework is this big every night. Some of you are at public schools where you have a teen that's working at night as well as family responsibilities, as well as homework, and they're not even getting home from their sports until 6 o'clock at night. You know what? I got it. I'm living a real life myself, okay? However, I'm going to try to convince you over the next 13 minutes that you need to try to learn a little bit more about this topic, because that's all I can do in 18 minutes is try to get you intrigued about it, and I think I will. So if you're talking about 8.5 to 9.5 hours of sleep, so for 9 hours, if your teen gets to sleep on your team at 9 o'clock at night, now let's say if they have to get up at 6 o'clock in the morning, how many of your teens have to get up at 6 o'clock in the morning? At least by 6 o'clock, right, to do practice. It means that according to the research, they need to be asleep at 9 o'clock at night. Yeah, she's laughing at me. She's like, when's the rigging guy coming? This lady's crazy. But here's what I really want you to grasp. Those that are shaking their head going, it's just not possible. Here's what I want you to understand. What we're figuring out is that teens are not very resilient as a group. When we look at the population, and again, my PhD's in human development, so I had to look at the population a lot. When we look across all demographics, we think as a nation that teens, they're tough. Teens are tough. T and T, teens are tough, teens are tough. It goes well together. It's not the truth, though. And this is what's really I want you to hold on to as coaches and people that are working with our young people. I'm going to ask a 15-year-old, I brought him with me as my prop, I'm going to ask him to stand up for just a minute because I want you to put, don't worry, the football coach has already got a hold of him. I know what you're thinking. He's happy. He wants nothing to do with throwing. All right, I want you to look at this guy for just a second. All right, thank you, Brooke. Go ahead and sit down. Okay, now look. Here's what I want to tell you, because I'm glad you're sitting down for this. I've got it written down so I don't mess it up. Among young people 10 to 24 in the U.S., suicide is the third leading cause of death in our country among young people aged 10 to 24. The U.S. Department of Health and Human Services recently did a study. In any 12-month period, 19% of teens seriously consider committing suicide. The reason I had that young man stand up is that I want you to picture, because I need you to just forget about stats and statistics, I want you to picture him and 99 of his friends. And what the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services found out recently is that if he stands up here, statistically speaking, with 99 friends, 19 of them seriously considered committing suicide last year. 15 of those kids, like him, actually formulated a plan in the last 12 months. And yet, when someone in your community commits suicide, a teen, we say, I'm so surprised. I'm so surprised. I didn't think anything was wrong. They seemed happy. We have to be willing to look at the facts. And that's why we're going to talk about sleep a little bit more, because there's some other really interesting stuff coming about sleep and teens and depression. So the research is clear about teens and sleep, okay? First of all, how many of you have some moody rowers once in a while? Raise your hand. We know that lack of sleep impacts mood. More than a third of teens surveyed, ready for this? Again, this is a vulnerable group, and I need you to understand that. More than a third of teens surveyed had a depressive mood score in one recent study. 73% of those with a depressive mood score reported not getting enough sleep. We're seeing a real link here between depressive mood and lack of sleep in teens. The research is also incredibly clear about academic performance and teens. If you're a coach and you're worrying about academic performance, I had a meta-study, all of these studies together, pages and pages. I wanted to bring, but then you would think I was a complete nerd. But I wanted to show you, it's all there, it's all clear. Just a very simple study to understand. One of the recent studies, GPAs of those students, teens getting more than 9 hours of sleep a night, is 1 grade point higher, 3.5 versus 2.5, of those that we call short sleepers, 6 hours of sleep a night or less. Like it or not, guys, this is what it's showing. And then I don't even have to ask you this question, but how many of you is athletic ability important for you and your team, right? Well, we know a lot right now about the physical impacts of lack of sleep on teens. We know that sleep deprivation causes increase in cardiac events in teens. We know that the maximum heart rate decreases with sleep deprivation. We know from lab experience that teens, we can put them in a laboratory, we can make them sleep less than they normally would. We give them food choices, and we see that their food choices change with lack of sleep. So it changes our food consumption. We see a decline in respiratory function among those not getting enough sleep, and we can also see change in thermoregulation, not able to get cool, not able to get hot. So I'm going to show you 2 minutes of a video. I don't care if you hear what the person says or not. I want you to look into the researcher's eyes. You guys are people. You know when somebody's telling the truth. Researchers, they're usually guessing. These researchers aren't guessing. They know what they're seeing in the lab. I just want you to watch 2 minutes of this and look into her eyes. Please. Thanks, Mike.
About sleep.
Okay. I see these interviews over and over and over again. I'm at the point where I'm not even listening to what the researchers are saying. I'm looking into their eyes, and they're all confident. They're all confident. They're saying things like, I challenge any CEO of any company to come in my lab and show me that his or her performance is as good without enough sleep as with sleep, and nobody's ever won. I'm looking at the confidence in their eyes, and that's what I find really fascinating about this area of research. In your packets is a 2-page, I just clipped 2 pages out of a long research paper, because nobody's going to have the patience to read this stuff, but I just want to show you where we're going now and some of the latest thinking on this, because now these tables are really beginning to turn in terms of our understanding. Sometime when you're really bored, you can read this abstract of this paper. It's 2011. That's how recent it is. What it's looking at now is we're seeing among teens that aren't getting enough sleep that we're starting to see that maybe there are psychiatric disorders that are coming on. So now we're not only looking at the physical aspect, but we're looking at teens with things like ADHD, bipolar disorder, depressive mood, that is sleep caused. That instead of all the medication that we've been giving kids who aren't performing well because of ADHD, we're now looking at the possibility it's sleep related. I ask my college students, how many of you sleep with your BlackBerry or your cell phone underneath your pillow so you never miss a text? I almost have to leave the room. I feel so sick when they raise their hands. And then I show them how they look at brain scans of people where we disrupt their sleep all night long, and then what happens to them physically over only 4 or 5 days' time. It is fascinating. And like if you would have watched that tape and continued, they say, we don't want to accept this fact. We're in denial about what it's doing to us. So at some point, maybe just look at the abstract of this. Again, all I want you to do is to get a little bit more excited to learn more about this information. It was a lot. It was heavy. It was depressive. I know you can't wait for the rigging guys to come up. But I want to give you a couple takeaway tools because I so appreciate you being here today. The first takeaway tool is this from my talk, is that I'd like for you to do your best, and I know you're all so busy, but try to educate yourself about what we are learning about sleep and teens. Don't believe it when your teen comes to you and says, Coach, I only need 5 or 6 hours. I'm doing good on that. I've always had 5 or 6 hours and I work really well. It's not the truth. I would love to believe it myself because you should see my to-do list. But it's not the truth, and we can't continue to buy into it when the scientific community is shaking their head no. It's not the right answer here. The second tool I'd like you to take away is I'd hope that you can use this information you heard today to look at your athletes in a big picture way. To look at your athletes the way the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services would look at them, to look at them the way the CDC looks at them. When an athlete comes to you late and said, Coach, I'm sorry, I overslept. You know, your first instinct as a coach or a teacher is to get angry. Oh, you screwed this up. You were late. You messed up my lineup. But what I hope that you can do after today's talk is to stop and ask that individual, John, tell me how much sleep you got last night. I've got tests all week. I went to bed at 3, or I went to bed at midnight, 6 hours. Then you need to start asking, John, how many hours of sleep do you usually get? Because I'm telling you, I think you can improve your performance by getting enough, for your athletes getting enough sleep. And then the last one, and yes, folks, for your efforts today, you heard it first here. We're coining a term today called sleep racing. We all know about seat racing, right? Well, today I want you to think about sleep racing. You know how we put people in a boat and you go fast and then you switch them and then you see how fast the boat goes? I'd like you to go home, develop a diagnostic tool for your athletes. Have them fill in how many hours of sleep they're getting a night, how they feel. It'd be a simple tool to do. Mike's doing one this year for his team because of the information that I'm feeding to him. Especially important over the breaks. When nobody's bothering you, how much sleep do you get? I know a guy that's getting 12 hours a night when nobody's bothering him because that's what his body is needing. So find out, and people are like, oh, that's so much. Hey, look, CDC is saying they're not that much behind toddlers in terms of their need for sleep because what's brain development and bone development, it takes a lot of rest to do what we're asking their bodies to do. Okay? So think about sleep racing when you get home. Thank you so much. Yep.
Okay, any follow-up questions that we have for Dr. Davenport? Tracy?
Yes, sir. You know, the thing is that there's a bidirectional influence. One's pushing this way and one's pushing this way as far as nutrition and sleep. What the research is showing right now is the opposite of what you're saying. It's saying that if our bodies are not getting enough sleep, our hormones are viewing that as a stress, and when we're under stress, we feel like we need to eat more, and there's actually research to show that we want to eat comfort food. We're seeing it with, I talked to a lady at the University of North Carolina last year doing research on orangutans. She has female orangutans in one group that are under stress, another group who she's allowing to rest and just be chill. She's seeing for the first time these female orangutans eating so much under stress and lack of sleep that they're forming belly fat. Now, it's okay, my students in college are like, ooh, belly fat. But the thing is, we all need fat. But women should not have fat in their belly. Only about 15% on average of women naturally carry fat in their belly. The reason it's important, I'm talking about belly fat with women and stress and not getting enough sleep, is that we now know that there's a relationship between belly fat and cardiovascular disease. So all of these things, what you're saying is right on track. It all fits together very nicely in a very scary picture for us as a nation. Somebody else? Yes, sir. We are talking about it, and it's funny you say that, because that's why I ask students if they're sleeping with their cell phones underneath their bed. We see more restorative work on our bodies when we get into a deeper sleep. In one of the videos, and maybe I wish I had that one to show you right now, what they do is they put students in a room, and they don't wake them up all the way. They just do noises all night long. They can watch their brain waves, but they don't wake them up. They just keep pulling them out of a deeper sleep. And then they watch their function throughout the week. The teens start getting very moody. They're up and they're down, and they're up and they're down. They say things like, the bright light's bothering me and I'm not sure why. They can't figure out what's the cause of their symptoms because they slept all night long, not knowing, they never tell them what they're doing to them. I tell you, if I could go back and look at one thing right now, the research is fascinating. It's a great question. Anybody else?
Did they do that off the job, or was there?
I know.
Is it a form of torture?
It is a form of torture.
I'm gonna pull the plug on it. It's
Bye.
nice.